Today we're returning to the world of versus battles to do an interesting fight that I thought of the other day. Shadow the Hedgehog from Sonic 3, taking on Conquest from Invincible Season 3. Who do I think wins? Well, let's get started. Starting things off with AP and durability, as physicals are pretty much going to be the important factor in this fight, considering Viltrumites, whilst being incredibly powerful, they don't really have that many notable hacks to speak of, outside of flight and their insane biology, obviously. And you'll have to bear with me on the Invincible side of things. One, because the scaling is kind of vague, especially with the high tier metas, but also I'm relatively new to the Invincible series, and I have to credit Goji Chronic for providing a lot of scans to this video. I'd recommend checking out his channel, link is in the description. But let's get started. Even though Conquest is old and likely past his physical prime, he is still stated to be the second most powerful Viltrumite of all time, second only to Frag, with Conquest being so powerful that other Viltrumites are scared of him. So as a baseline, he should upscale any Viltrumite and pretty much any feat that they have achieved in the series. Invincible was shown to be capable of surviving an experimental nuclear explosion at point blank range. And what makes this feat all the more impressive is that this isn't any nuclear bomb, as it was stated that said explosion would generate the most powerful solar flare ever recorded in history. Meaning that even if we're absurdly conservative, this would still yield multi-continental scaling for Invincible. And keep in mind that around this time, Invincible wasn't even as strong as Omni-Man, someone who Conquest was shown to be blatantly superior to, so multi-continental scaling as a lowball for Conquest should honestly be pretty acceptable, especially as Conquest rarely ever goes all out due to his sadistic nature. Frag also states that 37 Viltrumites by themselves, some of them being critically injured, would be capable of destroying the Earth, and assuming that literally every single one of them was chipping in and putting in equal measure, this would yield moon to planetary scaling for the average Viltrumite, which obviously Conquest scales massively above. But how does this compare to Shadow the Hedgehog? Well, as a baseline, the ultimate lifeform is stated and shown multiple times throughout Sonic 3 to be blatantly superior to Sonic. Not only through statements from Commander Walters saying that Shadow is the most dangerous thing that they have ever come across, but also statements from Knuckles saying that Shadow is much more impressive than Sonic. A single one of Sonic's quills is capable of generating an explosion that could be seen from space, which would be calculated to around island level, being conservative. And this would obviously scale to Sonic, as he's capable of taking hits from machines powered by his own quills, and we see in the final battle that he's shown to be able to overpower individual quills from his body, showing that island level scaling, even for a weaker, inexperienced Sonic, should honestly be child's play. Sonic, whilst inexperienced, could produce a shockwave of energy that rippled across the entire galaxy, to such an extent that it reached Tails' home planet, meaning that Sonic would be generating small planetary to planetary levels of energy with this shockwave. And keep in mind that this planetary scaling would apply to Shadow, number one because he's capable of knocking out Sonic as well as characters who scale to Sonic such as Knuckles, even when Shadow is holding back and still giving the heroes chances and opportunities to walk away. However, we see that Shadow is capable of generating enough energy to power the Eclipse Cannon, with the Eclipse Cannon being capable of causing the destruction of not only the Earth, but also the Eclipse Cannon itself, with this feat being calculated to large planetary, meaning that the Eclipse Cannon would require large planetary amounts of energy, which is the amount of energy that Shadow was able to generate, as he was the one powering the fucking thing. If we're looking at their low-end metas, then I do believe that Conquest is significantly more powerful than Shadow, as Shadow should upscale island-level characters, however Conquest should upscale multi-continental characters. However, if we're factoring in what they're capable of at their high ends, then I actually think it's surprisingly close. However, I'd give the slightest edge to Shadow, mainly because his feats are more concrete and less vague, with more impressive yields. Moving on to speed now, as this is where things get remarkably more interesting. Starting things off with Conquest, he should upscale from pretty much every single Viltrumite, meaning that he would upscale off of characters like Alan the Alien, and these feats, when calculated, put his speed anywhere between 24 and 2,500 times the speed of light. However, keep in mind that this is debatably a massive lowball for Conquest's speed, since Viltrumites are born with the innate ability to warp space and time to an extent whenever they fly. I'd be careful using this to upscale Conquest's speed, because it's unclear if Viltrumites can apply this ability in combat, but nevertheless, it's still very impressive speed metas for the guy. However, unfortunately, this speed meta is not at all remotely close when compared to the Sonic characters. As established earlier, Shadow should upscale anything that Sonic was able to achieve in base, including in Sonic 1 when he was able to statue missiles, which would put his combat speed around relativistic. However, the Sonic 1 novelization states multiple times that Sonic is capable of running at hyperspeed, meaning that Sonic, even during the events of Sonic 1, was capable of running at light speed. However, this is a massive lowball, as Sonic, as mentioned earlier, was capable of generating energy shockwaves that rippled across the universe, reaching Tails' planet in a short amount of time. And when calculated, this would put Sonic's energy attacks over 100 trillion times the speed of light, which Shadow would blatantly upscale from. As of right now, there really is nothing that Conquest would be capable of doing, as the speed difference is massive. Even if you make the argument that with his Viltrumite biology, he could warp space to an extent in order to bridge the gap is so fucking massive that it's debatable whether he'd be able to do this at all. Now, to give credit where credit's due, I think that Conquest is a much better fighter, and he's definitely much more experienced than Shadow, as he likely has mastery over all Viltrumite combat techniques and skills, and he has thousands of years worth of experience fighting both powerful and diverse enemies with various abilities and powers, meaning that fighting someone like Shadow at first glance should be nothing new to the guy. The issue for Conquest, however, is that he's never faced a character as fast as Shadow with the abilities that he has. And with the scaling metas laid out for us earlier in the video, I honestly see this fight being very similar to Omni-Man's encounter with Cecile from Season 1, where he's just teleporting all over the damn place and Conquest can't land a hit on him. However, at the very least with that encounter, Omni-Man had a significant power advantage over Cecile, as if he grabbed him at any point in that fight, or fuck, if he landed any attack at all, Cecile would be a splatter of blood pretty freaking quickly. However, in this fight, against a character like Shadow, who not only has teleportation, however, he's also significantly faster than Conquest, even in base, and he possesses a level of raw power that is equal to Conquest, if not above him entirely. I honestly don't see the aged Viltrumite having many advantages in this battle. I mean, fucking hell, Shadow in base could even catch Super Sonic off guard if he wasn't paying attention. And keep in mind that Super Sonic, just like every other Master Emerald tier character, is stated multiple times by not only Robotnik, but also Longclaw, to be a threat to the entire universe. Something that I definitely don't think Conquest is in this fight. And all of this is under the best case scenario, as Conquest has a habit of not taking fights seriously, and as a result of this, characters weaker than him, such as Invincible and Omni-Man, are capable of drawing blood from the guy. So a character like Shadow, who is equal if not superior to him, in addition to being much faster, should be capable of doing the same with ease, especially since Shadow doesn't fuck around and he will kill you if you piss him off. And if all of that wasn't enough, well, Shadow could just take off the inhibitor rings and get a massive power boost. If it hasn't become apparent already, I do think that Shadow beats the shit out of Conquest, and to be honest, I don't think this fight was very close. However, as a nice way of ending this video, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who became a channel member recently. Whilst I don't do YouTube primarily for the money, and I'm also not going to beg my audience for money and do a call-in just so you guys can pay my bills, it is very difficult to ignore the massive support that you guys give to the channel, and if I can do my bit to thank the few people who go above and beyond to supporting the channel, I'm all too happy to do so. At the moment, becoming a channel member for £1 a month will give you access to a pufferfish, a Sonic, a Tails, and a Knuckles emoji. However, with enough time, who knows, maybe you'll get an emoji of literally every single Sonic character. That's what I'm hoping to do anyways. I've just got to find someone talented enough to make those emojis, because God knows I'm not talented enough to do that shit. However, on a serious note, I want to thank you guys so much for this, as I can't tell you how much it means to me. And coming back to the whole Shadow versus Conquest thing, what do you guys think about the matchup? Let me know down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. With that being said though guys, I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.